Hello, welcome to Meta Perfume. I am Emily here today with Twixie, who is behind me on the floor, but she is not feeling good. Maybe I tried to pick her up and put her on her chair and she yelped. She never yelps. So I think that maybe she hurt herself. She seems okay, but when I tried to pick her up, she didn't seem okay. So hopefully she's fine. Yeah, anyway, I am finishing up my marathon series on Britney Spears fragrances today, covering the entire range. So this is going to be a little bit longer video than usual, probably, but I will not go into great detail on things like the notes because I already went through every fragrance that I have from Britney Spears in depth and posted either an individual review or a range review in the case of like the Prerogative range or the VIP or the private show range. So I'm just going to kind of give an overview of the entire collection, and I was looking at some marketing. I was kind of researching the marketing that she's done for these fragrances over the years. And it's crazy to see, you know, when Curious, the first fragrance that started the fragrance empire from young Britney came out, she was just a baby. She was just a little one, and I'll put a picture up here. And now, you know, she could almost be a grandma probably. I'm not sure how old her boys are, but yeah. So let's get into the fragrances and celebrate Britney's fragrance mecca. She has had an incredible career in many areas, you know, performance-wise, music-wise. I am a fan of Britney's music, especially kind of more edgy songs like You Better Work Bitch, and her collab with will.i.am, the one When We Up in the Club, All Eyes on Us, that one, Scream and Shout, that's what it's called. I love that song. And you know, she's an icon. And I'm gonna cover, I found this fantastic snapshot in time, point in time picture of all of the fragrances that she has released over the years. There are 36 showing here, but I do believe that I have one more that is released after this was made, which was the Candied Fantasy. So of the 36, there are 25 in my collection, 24 on this poster that are in my collection. One that was released more recently isn't included in the poster that I have, and two that I gave to my nieces, and unfortunately they had a tragic house fire. They were all fine, but the fragrances did not survive the house fire. So 27 at one point, now I'm down to 25 out of 37, I think. And the fragrance that started the whole thing was this Curious. She released 2 flankers of this early on. I do not have either of them. I think they're pretty hard to find and haven't been made for a while. So that would be Curious. In Control Curious is one, and I'm not sure what the third one is called, honestly. The next one that she released was the OG Fantasy, and this is the Curious is like a light floral, subtle floral with a little pear. Nice, pretty light. This one is a little bit more sweet, cupcake, lychee, kiwi. It's just a little bit, but it you know, it really hit in the aughts. Yes, in the aughts when this was released. I think this is 2005. Curious was 2004. So she started it off with that. And then the next flanker, the first flanker, I guess, of the fantasy range was the Midnight Fantasy, which is also kind of a strong fragrance with a heavy plum component. I think of this as a plum fragrance. It's a little polarizing. I enjoy it. It's still produced today. It's also, you know, speaks to the staying power. There's another piece of media from the Midnight Fantasy that I think is interesting with the plum note there. And then she came out with Believe. Believe was a one-off, but a good one. You know, I'm a little surprised that she never released a flanker to this. Maybe someday she will. Pretty, I wouldn't be mad about that. This is an interesting and unique fragrance in the Britney Spears milieu. Excuse me. She put patchouli and guava prominently in this, and it's that, like a fruity, earthy fragrance, but nice. I really enjoy this. I think it's a fan favorite. Believe. Also the only one in a kind of triangular geometric bottle. And then she came out with some more flankers. I think these are some of my favorite flankers. The Hidden Fantasy, which is a orange heavy with a little spiciness. I think of this as kind of a more fall fragrance. I get a lot of compliments on this. It is definitely a big departure from, I mean, there's a lot of variety in these. They keep close to their fantasy DNA on a few of them, and I'll point those out as I go along, but for the most, there's a lot of range of these. So there's another piece of early media here with, you know, kind of the early flankers that included Hidden Fantasy, and then next with the Circus Fantasy. I don't want to spray these because I'll spray it in the cap. Yeah, I like this one too. It's fruity. It's like, I think of candied apple, but I don't think that's a note, and I don't really smell apple. It's just got this like yummy candy sweetness that's well balanced with the base. It's not overly sweet to the point of being distasteful. I enjoy this one. I think it's pretty good. Circus Fantasy. Then I think she did a release in a like rectangular bottle. I don't remember, those are Radiance, I think maybe that's what it's called. I never bought those, even though I could have, because I didn't really like the bottle, honestly. I was like, I'll pass on that. And I don't think that they ever got really good reviews. I didn't see, nothing really compelled me to purchase those two. So, but she did then release one of my favorite in the fantasy range, which is the Island Fantasy, sadly discontinued now. And this is a watermelon, floral, tropical. It's really pretty, really great for summer. One of my favorite summer fragrances and one of my favorite watermelon fragrances. So Island Fantasy, I wish she would be re-released, but it's, you know, got a lot big one, so it's lasted a while. It's good stuff. And then I think she released some that were maybe the same fragrance in different like limited edition bottles, and I never got any of those either. Just had enough. Had enough. And if they were the same scent with a different packaging, which I think a lot of them were, then I did not get them. But the distinctive flankers, I did collect as many as I could find. She came out with this Rocker Femme Fantasy. I'm not sure what the year was. Maybe we're getting into the 10s now. And this one has a lactonic component, whipped cream note that's pretty prominent. It is not a bad fragrance, being, you know, lactonic, and not to my taste necessarily, but it's actually pretty yummy for a whipped cream heavy fragrance. So it's Rocker Femme Fantasy. Then she released the Intimate Fantasy. Intimate Fantasy is one of my favorites as well. Brown sugar note, vanilla. It's just very gourmand, very cozy. I think this is could be an all year round fragrance. Would probably stand up well in cooler weather. Definitely like a nice intimate, I guess. I think she made it so that you could wear it in an intimate situation. And it's sexy, clean, but cozy and sweet as well. So Intimate Fantasy is a nice one. Intimate Fantasy. Then we get the first of the Private Show range. This one has a coffee note prominently, and I think peach. It reminds me slightly of Black Opium, just slightly. And it's nice. I think some people really like this one. I think my preference of the two private shows is the VIP private show. So she came out with that one shortly after the private show. And this one has a really lovely composition. I think this is sadly discontinued as well. I think she should bring this one back too, because it's just a really delicious kind of, it doesn't have that prominent coffee note, but there are some, I think, mango and red apple, some really delicious fruit notes in the top. It's just a really well blended and sexy, sensual, lovely, delightful fragrance. One of my favorites for sure. VIP private show. And she released my least favorite, Sunset Fantasy, Polarizing. I think this one I reviewed when I got my cancer diagnosis, and yeah, it's still not for me. Too much amber, too much lactonic component, just not something that I'm gonna gravitate towards. And after this series is done, I may very well sell it. I know a lot of people have mentioned in the comments that they would like me to let them know, because obviously this is my taste, and if I don't care for it, doesn't mean that there aren't other people who do care for it, and apparently there are, because they've asked in the comments for me to sell it to them. So yeah, it may be people who like amber and lactonic notes, but that is Sunset Fantasy. And then she starts with the Prerogative range a little bit late in the fragrance empire. Prerogative is a first unisex release that she does, and it's got a saffron note. I think some men in the comments said that they enjoy this the most, and that kind of makes sense. It's the least feminine of them. And I'm gonna say I don't really care for it that much for me personally, but it is what it is. I think it's kind of unremarkable to my nose. Prerogative. And then there is the infamous Rainbow Fantasy that was released. So I'm going chronologically here, kind of hopping around, not necessarily all in the range, but in time. I set them up so that this is the Rainbow Fantasy, now discontinued, hard to find. This has a finger lime note. It is a nice fragrance. It is a little bit lighter, definitely not cupcakey, more fruity with that little bit of lime, but it's like a sugary candied lime, kind of, not necessarily like a true citrusy lime to my nose. But it is nice. These are all like interesting. I feel like she's done a really good job of creating a lot of varied, very distinctive flankers of the Fantasy original. And this is one of them. It's also very expensive and hard to find. Rainbow Fantasy. Then she released the Prerogative Rave, which is my favorite Prerogative. It's also the most feminine Prerogative. It is a little bit more just a fruity, but it's pretty low longevity. It's kind of generic smelling. It's not super remarkable. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of the Prerogative range. You can see my individual review of it, but this one is my favorite of the three in the set. Prerogative. Then she came out with Glitter Fantasy, which I think of as kind of a more, it's reminiscent a little bit of the Midnight Fantasy with that plum. There's a note of plum in here as well, but more sophisticated, a little more subtle, I guess. But this one I also think is maybe a little bit generic, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's not one I really remember distinctively or have a strong opinion about. It's fine, but you know, Glitter Fantasy. And then the next one that we have is the Festive Fantasy, and I have a little marketing thing that she had for this that I found. I'll put that up there. Festive Fantasy is alright. I'm glad I don't have a big bottle of it. I'll just say that. I think that it's, I'm gonna spray a little bit of this one just because it's not bad. There's that cherry. Yeah, it's wearable. It's alright. Festive Fantasy, maybe 6 out of 10. And then the last Prerogative came out, Prerogative Ego. Also, just, I feel like this is maybe like the bad times for Britney. Like this last set when Prerogative came out, it was like she's struggling with life and the conservatorship. All that stuff was probably in full swing, and these fragrances are maybe a little bit reflective of the challenges in the life at that point. Yeah, this one, I'm not gonna bash it, but it's not my favorite. Anyway, so then she's got a bunch that I have. I think all of the rest of them, like if we look back at the poster with all of these fragrances, I have like the bottom 2 rows, I think, in their entirety, and the newest one, Candied Fantasy. So we'll go through all of these. We have Fantasy Intense, and this one, the original Fantasy and Fantasy Sheer are the closest to the original Fantasy DNA. Fantasy Sheer is here. I think that was released pretty soon after the Fantasy Intense, so this was intended to be an intense version of Fantasy. This is intended to be a lighter version of Fantasy. I think they both do retain the DNA probably the best. So there's a piece of marketing I have, I'll put it up here, that I think has these 3, Intense, Sheer, and the original Fantasy. And of the 3, I prefer both the flankers to the original. I think that Fantasy Intense is a nice addition, a nice rendition of Fantasy, and an improvement on Fantasy with the patchouli note in there. I think that's a good compliment, and the way that they balanced it and blended this intense fragrance. I'm glad I picked it up. It was one of the holdouts I wasn't planning to get originally, but it is nice, and I do prefer it to Fantasy. I also prefer Fantasy Sheer to the original Fantasy. I think the original Fantasy gets a little bit too juvenile smelling maybe for me. She was, you know, in her defense, a teenager when she released them, so teenager, you know, I think maybe she was in her early 20s. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but she was young. But this one is a subtle, like fresher version of Fantasy without kind of the heavy, strong, sweet, super sweet notes that the original Fantasy has. So this is like a lightened up version. So we got the Intense, the original, and then this lighter Sheer, Fantasy Sheer, which is good. And then, excuse me, I read. My favorite Fantasy of all time was released, which is the Electric Fantasy, and this one It's just great, unique composition. Pink pepper kind of makes this what it is, and it's a distinctive note that no other perfumes in her range, I believe, have. Yeah, and I just really enjoy this one. This is one of my top favorite fragrances in my collection. Do I want to spray it? Kind of. Got Festive Fantasy on that hand. I'll put some Electric Fantasy on this hand. It's yummy. My husband gives me compliments when I wear this one. He likes it. It's just really, it's really good. Simple composition, but very well done. And that pink pepper note is just delicious. Now, pink pepper doesn't smell like pepper. It's hard to describe. It is just slightly spicy, but it's like got a sweetness to it. And the way they did this one is just yum. Okay, on and on about my favorite. Then I have the Blissful Fantasy. I have some more marketing up here. We'll put that. Blissful Fantasy is the very white floral one. This one is also very distinctive. It is just like a white floral bomb, and it's very strong, long lasting, kind of a beast mode white floral, in my opinion. Very pretty. If you're a fan of white florals, I think this is definitely one that you would enjoy. Blissful Fantasy, not a bad flanker. And then another newer flanker is Naked Fantasy. Not to be confused with Fantasy Sheer. This one is a much more of a departure from the original Fantasy DNA. It is, I'll put it, I think I have another thing of marketing for this one, Naked Fantasy. It's got an applejack note, I think, like a liqueur note that is unique, and I like this one too. And I think these recent fragrances, or these recent flanker releases, are actually pretty solid for the most part, so kudos again. This one I think makes me think more of cool weather. Like I think it lends itself a little bit better to a winter or a fall or an evening scent, and it is, yeah, pretty. Last two that we have are the Jungle Fantasy, and I have to reach again because I put that like there's a big collection in front of me. I get there. The Jungle Fantasy. Jungle Fantasy will have another Britney thing, and now, you know, we started with the Curious when she was just a youngin, just starting her career, and then this, and she's an adult, you know, and she's a woman. She's a full-grown mama. And Jungle Fantasy is another watermelon note. It is a little more musky, pretty low longevity in my opinion. It's okay. I mean, I think that potentially I could use this whole thing. I probably wouldn't need a larger size. I'm not like mad that I didn't get the bigger size, but it's not bad. It's just, of the watermelon ones, my preference is definitely Island Fantasy to Jungle Fantasy. And then lastly, but not least, is the Candied Fantasy, which has a bubblegum note. This again is very youthful. I would think of this like maybe as a gift for a teenager or somebody in their early 20s. Like, it's got a strawberry note, I think, and a bubblegum note. It's fruity, it's sweet. In terms of like, yeah, it being youthful, kind of like the Fantasy, original Fantasy, but also a little bit maybe too sweet, in my opinion. Yeah, it's not bad though. Candied Fantasy. We've got the box here. So that brings us to the end. That is 25 of the 37 Britney Spears fragrances that have been released, to my knowledge, and they put everything in that poster. So whoever made that poster, thank you to them. And thank you all for tuning in. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you're not subscribed, it would be fantastic if you could subscribe, maybe put on your notification bell. That would be amazing. I would really appreciate it. And I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much. Take care. Happy Labor Day weekend. Bye-bye.